Good morning. How's everyone doing? Yeah, are we awake yet? Had our coffee kick in? Well, I'm really excited to be talking to you about a topic that is actually really exciting for me, is go-to-markets. And raise of hands, has anyone actually led, been through, gone through a launch process before? How many of you out there? Several. Awesome. We know that this can be super stressful times, right? There's a lot that goes into go-to-market efforts, even if you're starting maybe in the middle of it, or maybe if you're starting at the very ideation all the way through to launch. What I also plug is, of course, even after launch, you need to nurture that product, you need to build it, you need to grow adoption. There's many efforts that go into it. So I want to kind of talk to you about that. But I also want to put a little spin on it, right? We've talked a lot about our own branding. Who are we as product marketers? And us in the room seem to have a general consensus of who we are. But then the organization and the other teams that we work with, there's slight misinterpretations or misunderstandings. So I want to use this deck as a way for you to actually take it home and use it with the teams that you collaborate with. How can you start creating this similar nomenclature and terminology that your solution consultants understand, that your sales team understands, that your account success teams understand? So this go-to-market strategy isn't for you in the room as product marketers. You understand it already. It's essentially, how are you explaining your go-to-market to your primary stakeholders? That's the key takeaway. So a little bit about me, Associate Director at Sprinklr. Sprinklr is a global SaaS organization. We root ourselves in being the world's first unified front office solution for modern channels. Now, if you haven't heard all of that, I'm more than happy to tell you more about Sprinklr later, but ultimately the main takeaway is that we have offices all over the globe. We have employees and coworkers and colleagues all over the globe. This requires consistent, deep collaboration and good communication skills as we talk about our products, as we learn about new functions and features, but definitely as we're trying to enable our sales team and anyone customer-facing. As I mentioned, if you're wanting to learn more about Sprinklr, please do talk to me. I'm passionate about what I do and passionate about the industry that I'm in, and Sprinklr is definitely a great enabler for me to do what I love. But let's get into it. I'm going to go through some of these questions a little bit faster. I think we've targeted several of them already. But what department does product marketing work for? This question has come up even in our own conversations. Is it marketing? Is it product? Do you have maybe a sales enablement, as we've heard before? These are clarifying points that we want to be able to make so that when we're thinking about our go-to-market strategy, we're thinking about how are we going to align it to our other organization's priorities, and what does it mean to them that's going to drive value for their organization or their department, right? Another question that we might ask ourselves, other teams are probably asking as well, is how many teams does product marketing actually work with or support? You ever ask yourself that? There's a lot of teams that, yes, sales enablement is primary and it's key. However, there's several of us in an organization that work and collaborate with our customers. And as we've heard before, the customers is what's really matter. Are our customers happy? Are they having a good experience? And every single one of us has the ability to influence that experience. And it's not always just directly the salesperson. It's not always directly that account management person. They have that one-to-one relationship. But there's many of ways that we have to be able to collaborate with that. And this is just kind of a picture of showing, okay, there's a lot of different teams out there and all the ones that are kind of working and that we're working with, we're working for, we're trying to enable. There's a lot that goes on out there. Something else, again, what is product marketing? How do we prove value? Is it through adoption, new revenue, retention, a combination? Do you have a team out there? Again, what is it that we're trying to do to actually drive value for our organization? And it's rooting back into our go-to-market. It's rooting back into creating that same terminology for ourselves. So something with Sprinklr is I always like to start with a goal. When I get my team in a room, when I'm trying to work with them on saying, okay, guys, we have this new product to launch. We're really excited about it, and I want you to be excited about it too. I need everyone to have this energy and have this drive. And so what I like to do is root it in a goal. This goal is maybe a bit broad, but ultimately our goal with go-to-markets is to deliver the biggest return on investment, right? it gives people this excitement. It gives them this clarity of like, okay, I understand where we're headed with this project. It's not a special project. It's not something coming down from leadership or we might see some adjustments. This is something that we really want to take from ideation and creation all the way through to launch and post-launch activities. So when I have my team in a room, and again, this isn't just product marketers, this isn't just product managers, this is including my solution consultants, this is including possibly some SMEs or subject matter experts that are coming from different parts of the organization. Regardless if I've worked with them in the past on projects prior, or if they're newer to the organization, I really like to root people into a framework that we're all familiar with, that pragmatic marketing, which I think is now Pragmatic Institute. But we've talked about this as well. I like to root and orient my team to this because then it's not my idea. Go-to-markets are not a sprinkler thing. They're not a Holly's project plan thing. It's a best practice that's out there that, again, us in the room are maybe a little bit familiar with. But remember, branding is key. And if I'm able to root my idea in something that has a best practice, there's a little bit of validity to it. There's something that someone's going to believe. It's not just my idea. It's something, again, that's an industry-trained model. So I really try to have that conversation with my team so, again, they can feel, okay, this is going somewhere. This isn't just another one-off project. But I further build it out. And if you really studied the pragmatic framework, you'll know from like left to right, you'll see the strategy on the far side, execution on this other hand. And we want to essentially get all the way through this. There's several tasks and several motions. What I've also added from top to bottom, though, is something from a little business to technical. Again, just kind of rooting people in what it all means. But I take it a step further. I actually go through the process and say who owns what through a little bit of color coding and mapping. And I let them know that while everyone in this team is going to be collaborators and contributors, we still need to have that one owner, that one person that's going to help us bring it to the finish line, right? And so you can see here that product marketer is going to have and own some things, product management is going to own others, and then there's going to be that collaboration when we actually bring it to marketing. And that's really key. Now, in your organization, this might be different. Your color map might lay out just slightly different, again, based off of how your roles, responsibilities are falling out. But what it does, it's driving good conversation. It's driving good clarity. It's understanding that relationship between product marketing and product management. It's understanding that relationship between your copywriters on marketing, your demand gen team on marketing, what it is that you can do as a product marketer to set them up for success. I like to use that framework to, again, paint that picture, get them in the same understanding. But from here, this is really where the rubber meets the road, and we really start talking about our go-to-market process. And I will share, the common 3 buckets that we see is our definition partners, our limited availability, and then, of course, the big one, general availability, where we get ready for that big launch. And before I go into the granular, more detail with this, I will say I've been through several launches myself, big, small, ones that take, quite honestly, a year, some that take 6 months, ones that are much shorter. But what I will tell you is that we've worked with go-to-market strategies that are just this eye chart, this Gantt chart that never ends, all the tasks, all the details. And while they kind of look great if you're an Excel nerd and you like that stuff, it's really hard to be agile with them. It's really hard to wrap people's minds around, when do I do it? How do I do it? And we've gone all the way to the other end of the spectrum where we make super simple go-to-markets. Just these few little tasks that hopefully the implied name, the subject line, is going to give you enough context. But what this process and what this diagram is, as I'm about to unfold, it really starts wrapping people's head about how this whole monster cog of a wheel works together and how it operates and when people come in and what milestones we want to hit at each stage as we go through definition partnership, limited availability, or GA. So when we start with definition partnership, there is a lot of collaboration between product management and product marketers. There is a little bit more lean on product management, I would say, at least within Sprinkler, for them to understand what is happening in the external market, what's happening within our market selection. Is it something that we want to build, buy, or partner? You guys heard of that before? What are our competencies? How are we going to differentiate? What is the general pricing and packaging? And yes, Pricing and packaging is collaborative effort between product management and product marketing. You have to be able to understand what that is and how you guys are collaborating together. So this definition partnership phase is that kind of, I've got this idea, we see this opportunity. How are you formulating it into actually something that your product, your service is actually going to be able to sell? How is it going to fit in your current portfolio of items that your company might already have? And of course, there is a prototype development, as we've just heard from the previous speakers. We want to build out our wireframes. We want to build out something that our customers can play with, can touch, can kind of poke around and tell us, this doesn't work, this isn't how I interpret it, this, I need to be able to integrate with some other function, source, something like that. This is really where you just got to kind of grind through things and figure it out. And I want to talk about the milestones in just a minute, but as you move from definition partnership, you're going to get into limited availability. And limited availability, again, is that partnership between product management and product marketers, but this is where that messaging comes into frame. This is where that language in your initial pitch deck might be created, but you're still working with a subset of customers and getting their feedback, understanding what's working, what's not working. Do we need to pull it back from the market? And that's why definition and limited availability are kind of this constant turning wheel. You're going to have to work with your team to set various deadlines, various milestones that you want to hit. But sometimes when you pull in more customers, you recognize this is not working. This is not what we thought it was going to be. Maybe it's actually working for one industry and not the other. So how do you constantly iterate? How do you pull it back? And I just put that kind of animation, and I'll play it again so you guys can really understand it's not a linear process, go-to-markets are not. They tend to be cyclical. They tend to require a lot of rework and just trying it again, seeing what sticks. Now, when you do find, okay, this is working, this is good, we've got something solid, I can go to my sales team with confidence. I can go to my enablement team and tell them, here are some troubleshooting ways to work around. Here's some industry specifics that you shouldn't forget. You're ready for general availability or that launch. Now, this is where you shift as a product marketer, something that I really enjoy about my job. You're shifting from that partnership with product management, doesn't go away, but you ultimately lean more now towards your marketing partnership, right? How are you going to enable, as we heard prior, your marketing team so that we don't end up as copywriters or we don't end up as landing page writers, but you're still enabling them to use your messaging house, your messaging matrix, to actually create some really great activations that empower your customers and empower your prospects to want to buy your solution, right? We actually use that handoff, right? We use a handoff, a launch brief, ultimately, to transfer that information from our own setup to our marketing team, and we're still working through what that actually means, but it is empowering a lot of different efforts, a lot of different motions, and they start leaning on us as product marketers, not necessarily as those copywriters, but as the strategic thought leaders. And that's the position that product marketing can really empower and be in, which is awesome. But it doesn't end there. I really want to iterate. Go-to-markets don't end on launch day. It's great. We've heard it before, right? Launch day is fabulous. We've hit the go button. We can relax. It's not over. No, you still need to pull that through. You need to understand who's actually adopting, who's coming in, who's purchasing, who's becoming this advocate of a buyer that I can get case studies, stories from, and understand what's next, right? So you need to think about that customer experience, and you ultimately need to create that feedback loop. Now, the line on the very bottom is a little small, but you'll see it. This is a constant iterative process, right? You're going to be moving from GA products, not necessarily a whole product going back to limited availability, but maybe some aspects. You can think of your release cycles. So it's kind of where you need to be thinking about how it kind of comes back around and how you're training your teams to expect changes and updates. Doesn't necessarily mean you redo your entire pitch deck. It doesn't necessarily mean that you redo your entire messaging house. What it just means is that you're needing to constantly iterate. It's never really done. Now I use this again. Think about the people that I have in the room when I'm presenting. It is, my product marketers as counterparts, but I also have my solution consultants. I have some of my SMEs from other departments that I'm trying to rally and say, okay, these are the steps and milestones that we want to hit. The various milestones as Sprinkler has set them, include things, what we call a toolbox. Now, similar to your marketing brief, that we as product marketers put together and give to our marketing counterparts. The toolbox is essentially what we work with our product management team. The product management team will help collaborate, put all their understandings, their differentiators, their competitive intel, all of this information lives with what inside a toolbox. It is essentially a PowerPoint deck with all of this information, but it's a collaborative document between product management and product marketers so that there's one source of truth for resources. So me as a product marketer, I now have this tool to go into and deep dive and understand what the product is. And remember, this is super helpful. My product management team does not sit not right beside me. My product management team isn't even in the States. They're in a completely different time zone. So this asset, this tool helps us conquer the different time zones, the distance that's required to have a good communication tool when we're collaborating. We also, through the definition partnership stage, try to survey our customers and gain essentially an NPS. What is it? How are they feeling about it? This helps us validate should we move to the next stage. Similarly, with limited availability, we try to survey our clients as well, ensure that we're getting valid statements and saying it's not my opinion as a product marketer, it's not your opinion as a product manager, there can be biases involved. No, we want to look to our customers and our prospects to help us define, is this product really ready? And then even within general availability, we want to know that there are a few things ready before that launch day, right? Especially supporting document, especially those training motions that have taken place. So let's move into roles and responsibilities. We all have an understanding now of what our go-to-market process is, but what is it and how are we going to collaborate across the organization to pull them all in, pull everybody together? We saw this slide earlier with all the roles, all the functions, marketing, documentation, support, success, enablement consultants, solution consultants, pre-sales versus post-sales, right? We've got to enable them all. There's a lot of different teams. They got different priorities. How are we pulling them together? This is something that I use quite often to help really educate teams. How are we going about this and how are we prioritizing and orienting different pieces of documentation to your role? If you guys ever really think about it, it oftentimes feels like this little bit of an onion, right? And at the core of the onion is all the details of the product, the deep product understanding. And as you further move out, there's going to be the sales team who doesn't necessarily need to know every single feature, why and how that API functions, why your AI is formulated the way it does, why that algorithm is putting this output. Your sales team needs to know the general value statements that it's going to give to your customers. So they're on that farther outside. So what this diagram really helps us is say, this is the detail that you're going to be getting, or at least we're wanting to collaborate with you on. So again, you can kind of see how that chart of who are you amongst the organization is really starting to be split between how much deep technical information is required and how much more of that value statement needs to be delivered. And we want to be able to split that diagram across our organization. Also, again, I've been talking about who's in the room. We use the acronym SME, which I'm sure some of you have used it before, that subject matter expert. But even pulling those subject matter experts into a room and trying to rally them over for a go-to-market or any project plan, really, there's still roles and responsibilities that must be identified. So this chart for us is something that we've been using to help define how is it that we're all going to be working together and start defining those roles. This is something that I would not do independently. I can't tell you as a solution consultant what your best role is. But instead, this helps actually drive that conversation, that connection, right? That collaboration. If I contribute a little bit, I've got skin in the game so that I can actually feel like I'm going to deliver. My name is on it. I want to deliver and execute well. So again, this is a framework for you to be able to look at and say, how is it that I can start reaching out to my various stakeholders and getting them involved in go-to-markets much earlier. So when you're talking to your sales team and saying, oh no, I'm sorry, advocacy is still in limited availability. Your salesperson isn't going to be like, well, can I still sell it? Can I demo it? Right? No, we want that same terminology, we want that understanding, that consistency, because that helps you move forward. You're not having to constantly reiterate or put out fires that come up. We know what happens, right? And so again, I really want to try to empower everybody when I'm in these meetings, these kind of like foundational kickoffs. So I want to make sure that we're defining who's who, how are we going to work together, what are the roles and responsibilities. And again, I'm hoping when these slides are shared, when these presentations are shared, you guys can actually use this as a template and translate it to how you guys want to use it for your team. So again, just some placeholders for exactly who should be in that room. And quite frankly, not everyone is in the room at the very first day, right? They're going to be pulled in at various moments in your go-to-market. We have a lot of our enablement teams come in a little bit later. We actually have our solution consultants because they're very valuable from a client feedback perspective, and the demo creation come in pretty early with our product management team, of course. So think about that. I hope you're able to use this as essentially a template for creating your own go-to-market, not really just from this conceptual standpoint, but from an educational standpoint, and actually being able to, have the rubber meet the road. So some next steps, as I mentioned, work with your product management team to develop this, collaborate there first, and then go out to the rest of the organization and start understanding what other stakeholders can you pull in. Help to educate and evangelize your go-to-market across the organization, right? Create that similar terminology across different departments. It's so valuable. It's so valuable for us as product marketers to really define who we are in the organization, right? We've talked about that good branding. And be flexible. Like I've mentioned, we've had very detailed go-to-markets. We've had very high-level go-to-markets, and we needed to find this happy medium. And that took a couple of years to figure out, quite honestly. So learn as you go, be agile as you do it. And some key takeaways is that product launches are of all shapes and sizes. You are going to have ones that last much longer. You're going to have ones that are a bit shorter. But they are kind of this, constant iterative process. How are you gaining adoption after that launch? How are you gaining and reducing churn, right? What are those processes? They do require cross-functional resourcing, as we've mentioned. Oftentimes that product marketer is the one that's kind of the point person, the one leading the efforts and coordinating it all. I think it's a fun role to be in because you do gain so much knowledge of all the processes. But do understand, lean on your counterparts, be specific with them, right? They're looking to you as a leader, so be okay saying, these are my expectations and what I hope to have you deliver. And then, of course, align with your team on exactly what are the milestones that you want to be setting? What are the risks and rewards of setting those milestones, and how can you really start facilitating those across your organization? So thank you. I hope that was super helpful for you guys. I'm happy to talk more about go-to-markets. They are of great interest of mine. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but...
Yeah, let's do a couple questions. Any questions for Holly?
No questions? Oh.
Let me try to get Mike.
You're sharing this presentation with us, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. A lot of it seemed like it was designed around a more lengthy go-to-market. Do you have any kind of tips or ways we can kind of look at it to slice and dice for like quicker go-to-market strategies and such, or any tips on that?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at that framework as a whole, for me, it's setting that common language and understanding of what a go-to-market is. Now, some of those details across each step, and I will say, I didn't share all the slides. A lot of those key steps, or you can build them out in much more detail. But what I will say is that oftentimes with a shorter launch or something that's a smaller project, you probably have a lot of that collateral already developed. So you're checking boxes off right away. You might have to do a little bit of a gut check saying, okay, is this something new? What is this feature and how I'm gonna actually bring it to life? It might be more of that marketing brief handoff versus this is an idea that we need to really foster and bring to our market. So I would look at it as more as a framework, but you're probably, if it's a shorter launch, you're probably way ahead in the process than you think you might be.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Holly.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
So we have